Hospitality can be evangelism, or evangelism can be just showing good hospitality or welcoming strangers. And the Old Testament is laden with all of these statements about how you treat the stranger in your midst, which is really still important to us and something that we should be very careful about and deliberate about. We should welcome, and then we should, according to the Old Testament, many times treat the stranger as a member of the family, not just as someone who happens to drop by while they're transiting to some other place, but someone who may want to live there. So we'll start this, and these are some questions that I'd like us to consider. How does he define the church? He defines it as an organism, not an organism, as it's written here. But it's a living thing. We have to be careful about that. Sometimes churches can become robotic in the way they attack problems and the way they carry out their worship and the way that they practice evangelism. So he thinks that we should be having some mission to bring people to Jesus Christ and to put theology into practice. Don't just talk a good talk, but live the talk. So he talks about hospitality and evangelism, and then he tells some stories. And he says telling stories are a good way to relate to people. And I think that's very true. And how to show kindness and love. So let's begin.
In his prayer by the theologian and mystic Reverend Dr. Howard Thurman, may we pray. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Teach me how to order my days, that with sure touch I may say the right word at the right time and in the right way, lest I betray the spirit of peace, that we not be deceived by my own insecurity and weakness, which would make me hurt another as I try desperately to help myself. Keep watch with me, O my Father, over the days of my life, that with abiding enthusiasm I may be in such possession of myself that each day I may offer to thee the full, unhampered use of you in all my parts as an instrument of peace. Amen.
And you'll notice that
I'm receiving some chats about
Thurman is our sacred.
Allowing the videos to be shared. I hope that has been corrected. Very good. Now it's good to see you, and not just your days. Thank you for those notes. We had 183 people to register for this session, and everyone showed up. We had to make some adjustments to our Zoom tonight. Very good. I am Reverend Dr. Bill White, Jr., and I serve as the Director of Equity and Justice Ministries for the West North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church, which is a new ministry and office in the conference. My role is to direct strategic efforts in the conference as relates to diversity, equity, and advocacy, and to implement them throughout the conference. It is also to lead the implementation of the conference's comprehensive plan of equity and related initiatives and programs, and to serve as a staff liaison and support for all of our ethnic ministries and advocacy efforts. I'm happy to be with you this evening and to offer this presentation on evangelism as hospitality, making space for strangers. As I said, there are quite a few of us on the call which within our ability to hear from one another and engage in conversation. And there's a lot of information that I want us to share in a short period of time. And so this is kind of going to be a survey course. Normally this might take 2 to 3 hours, but we have an hour tonight. And so hopefully you will find this helpful information. The church. Well, before I begin with the church, let me ask my ministry administrative assistant to introduce herself and to share additional information.
Sure. Thank you, Bill, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We've got a lot to pack into this 1 hour, but just a couple of reminders. We're going to have all of these sessions recorded and available on the website, so you can play them back or share them with others. We do ask that you keep your microphone muted to reduce the background noise. And we're also going to provide a link.
This is just to have to
really good feedback on the session.
if you have a question.
At the end of the session, you can scan the QR code. But we're also going to send follow-up email.
Those are some of the pictures. You'll see Margaret.
You can see that as well as the link to
She was our
the
representative.
recorded session. So, and if you have questions, we might not be able to get to them, but if you want to drop them in the chat, I'll be sure to get those back to Dr. Bill.
The word equity.
Great, thank you so much, Carol.
Which is a very important word.
The church. What is the church? If you had to define it for someone, what would you say? And feel free to write this in the chat as well. How would you define the church? What is the church? Who is the church? Is it an organization? Someone said it's the people. Is it a building? Stained glass windows, carpet, pews. COVID has surely taught us that it is not the building, right? As a matter of fact, the younger generation is teaching us new ways to do and be church. Many are not as concerned about the building or even a regular worship hour as much as what can we do in the world? How can we make a difference in the world? What can we do in our communities? Who is the church? What is the church? We are believers in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior of our lives. We are the body of Christ. Many members, but one body. Different functions, but one body. I was a pre-med major for a while in college before I changed to political science. And one of the things we talked about was that the body is made up of systems. The systems are made up of organs, and the organs are made up of cells. And the organs have to be healthy, and the systems have to work together in order for the body to function effectively and efficiently. The parts of the conference and local congregation have to work the same way as our physical bodies. The church is not an organization, but an organism. It is the body of Christ. The church is alive.
And Shasta said one day,
The church is
what is
alive.
the most
Organizations
important part?
to be
She
static,
said the part of the
stagnant state,
at the moment
don't
hurts.
function as organisms, as live living beings. I would also contend that the church is like a circle. And we are in that circle. We, as believers, have been called out of the world to form this community of faith and love in Jesus Christ. We've been called out of the world. We're in the circle. The world is outside the circle. The church is in the circle. We've been called out of the world to form this community of faith and believe in Jesus Christ. But we've been called not to be an exclusive community, but to be equipped and nurtured in order to go back into the world to proclaim and witness to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then also to invite others, yes, strangers, to share in this salvation story so that it may become their story. They too become witnesses. We are a called and sent people. Disciples, called, apostles, sent. We're disciples and apostles of Jesus Christ. Give you a chance to take those notes.
That was the difference between disciple and apostle. Called.
What is the mission of the church? Is it to increase our membership rolls? Is it to compete with one another? Well, we have this many ministries. We have this many members. Is it to be a social club? A fraternity or sorority? You're familiar with Luke chapter 4, verses 18 and 19. Where Jesus states his mission, which is therefore our mission. Jesus says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. This is the New Revised Standard Version, the updated edition. Yes, the mission of the church is to bring people to Jesus Christ, to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. Does that sound familiar? Okay, I know if that sounds familiar. You ever heard that before? As United Methodists. So one of the things I like to do in these kinds of sessions and teaching opportunities is to always begin with a biblical perspective, a theological perspective, and then move to the practical perspective and application of it. I believe the biblical theological foundation is extremely important and absolutely necessary. But then how do we apply that to everyday life? How do we make that relevant? How do we put that into practice in our own lives and in our own ministries? So we move from theology to praxis. Again, application to doing. So when we talk about hospitality, it is the opening of one's space to a stranger or visitor. The stranger is someone we do not know and who is new to a particular environment or community. It is not just opening one's physical space, that's hospitality, but it's also opening one's heart and mind. Do you think you can open your building or physical space and still have a closed heart or mind? Do you know of any situations where we say our doors are open to everyone, stranger comes into those doors, and perhaps our hearts and minds are not open but are closed, and perhaps our body language indicates that. To entertain or receive a stranger, a sojourner, into one's home as an honored guest, that to provide the guest with food, shelter, and protection, that's an Old Testament understanding of hospitality. The Old Testament contains specific commands for the Israelites to love the strangers as themselves. And there are biblical scriptural references for this. And they're on the screen now if you want to take a screenshot of that. Again, writing those down. There's some scriptural references in this slide. There we go. And you're able to enlarge that on your screen. Again, take a screenshot, write those references down. We have more time to have you read those passages for us and to go through each one. But you see the Leviticus reference, the Deuteronomy reference, what it means to love the strangers as themselves. The reason for practicing hospitality was that the Israelites themselves were once strangers in the land of Egypt. Acts of hospitality is demonstrated by Rahab.
Could we stop right here just a second?
Joshua's reference, Hebrews,
Do
James.
you have any feeling about how what he's talking about could be a national question as well as a personal question or a question for the church? What is the national issue right now that pushes on this particular question? Hospitality. A stranger who comes. Immigration, right? So what is the problem as it is perceived? And how do we have any input on the way it's handled?
Well, the issue currently is the path to citizenship, the benefits that those who are immigrating currently have and the rights that they currently have. And also, a lot of that is based in their fear because they're afraid of getting deported. So they, I guess, accept substandard human treatment in order to continue to reap what little benefits they get from this country.
The problem starts with the people that are already here, not the people coming in. So if the people that like, and I'm sorry I go this way, but I always go this way. The one time Jesus got angry, he overturned the money changers, and that we read of it in stories. And people that are like the economic structure, the class system that we have the way they are, they're the ones that are going to put out the idea that you have to be afraid of the stranger. Be afraid. They're going to take something from you. The little you have, you're going to lose that too, because they're going to take it from you. And that's the competing message going back and forth. And I will just as a point of, it's not a matter of what side you're on. You need to fix a broken immigration system. I know for a fact, my dad came over here in May of '49, and by 1955, my dad was a naturalized citizen. So you're talking 5 years. Not only that, to get a chance to even come in, and I told the story before, I didn't have a card, you know, the baby didn't have a card coming in, it's like, well, I'm gonna put the baby back on the boat, you know? So I know for a fact from that it took less than a year for him just to be able to get the papers he needed to get here. Now, if you have power and influence, it may take you 20 years to become a naturalized. It may take you 10, 15 just to get in because of quotas. And if there's anything that isn't anti-Christian, to me it's that, you know, welcoming the stranger, you know, we've talked about Abraham being in the tent and it's open on four sides, that's right. You don't need to be afraid of people, if they're coming here, they want to be like us. You know, I don't mean like us, like be this, you know, we have this thing about, and I heard this when I was really young about this kind of being a melting pot, and there's a deception in that imagery that we all want to be the same. No, it's really, you want it to be a mosaic. So from far away, this beautiful picture, but each
the diversity we say is a good thing, don't we?
Yeah, and you want to keep that diversity.
We say that other people have different strengths, maybe, and that the picture will be enhanced rather than being all just one pastoral scene, or whatever it is. But there's, how do migrants touch your life?
Well,
Eat every day.
we eat every day, that's it.
Have you tried to get any painting done lately? Who are the painting crews that are doing most of the work in the community?
Cleaning people
Cleaning people.
are migrants. And the best cleaning I've ever seen, ever, in my life.
Tree surgeons.
Yard work.
A lot of services that most people who have the benefits of health insurance and things like that feel are below them because they're either dangerous, labor intensive, or time taking.
But don't you think it's interesting that the people who protest the most are those who are trying to protect, you know, their jobs and their lives, when in actuality, they're not willing to do that work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay for the people who have the money to bring those people in, like big construction companies or the, you know, the harvesting of all our crops, all of that. They can get people to come in because they have the political power and the money to do that. So the politics is just a huge factor in all of this. It has nothing to do with whether they want the people to come in or not.
And we have in this church a person who has gone out of her way to show hospitality to migrants by helping them learn the language. And that's Lucy.
That's what my intercession does.
And your intercession.
I'll never forget paying attention to the incident that happened in Charlottesville, Virginia, a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, I'm not sure exactly how many. In the young men, the young white men that marched and carried torches, and what they said, well, Jews will not replace us, is what they said. When I heard it at first, I thought they just said, you will not replace us. And I think that one of the huge fears that is stoked by those who want to remain in power is that the white race is going to be replaced by people of color. And so that means the white race is going to lose its power and influence. And so it is just a fear that is stoked. And so I see all of this as holding on to power and, money by, closing our borders and making it very, very difficult. It's about class and power.
It's this takeover mentality that they're gonna take over your jobs, they're gonna take over your schools. It's a misinformation.
But someone made the case that if they were not here, what would be missing? Would we have a spread of food that we see at Ingles, where the fresh produce is there now? How did that produce get there? Who grew it? Where was it grown? Clothing, where are the clothes that you got on your back made?
Probably not in America.
Probably not.
Probably not.
But when they got here, how did they get from the shores of wherever to Asheville or wherever you bought this stuff? Who unloaded the ships?
Those people on the pier and those truckers, we couldn't do without them.
The politicians were the ones who were bringing them in, and they were being pushed to do it by the growers and people who need that labor force.
So what is it? Is it too big for us to do anything about?
It's small, consistent actions that make the greatest impact. I remember, I think my stepdad told me this. I was trying to learn mandolin. Unfortunately, we have not arrived there. But he said, it's better to do 15 minutes a day than 2 hours on a Saturday. And so I think about that. You know, obviously donating money is a great effort, but also, you know, just donating your time, like learning English as a second language classes, supporting, you know, local, like, different restaurants, like the new Mexican restaurant that's gonna be open, and just helping out the communities. And also, something that's very helpful is supporting your local health organizations, Maytech in Asheville, and most of the families that I work with that are Spanish-speaking families and things like that, that's where they get their primary health care. They depend on donations because they don't have health insurance, because their jobs, such as lawn care, freelance construction, obviously don't provide health insurance. So just giving them the ability to have access to those resources is all the difference.
Yeah, but you're talking about once they get here.
Yeah.
And the problem that I see is allowing them to get here. And I know once they get here, there's things that can help them, but, and I don't want to belabor this, but, one of the things I was thinking of when John was talking about how difficult it is to get processed is, one of my daughter-in-laws was working on programs to facilitate immigration and getting through all those forms and steps they had to, and hoops they had to jump through in order to get this done. And she's very efficient at her job, and she was doing a very good job. Well, guess what? She was asked to leave. Politicians did not like her making this easier for the immigration process to take place. So to me, it all boils down to political. And the only way I see that we can do anything about it is by our vote, by getting out and supporting candidates that we believe will be supporting these values. But that's the most effective way.
So I think this is an example of the necessity for attacking a problem sometimes from many different angles. And Mary let me borrow a book called American Dirt, which chronicled, it was a fiction story, but I think it was based on absolute truth. It chronicled the passage of a potential immigrant from San Salvador to the United States because it was a life and death matter. And how you get to the border is a terrible trip in itself. Yet we support sometimes governments that do not take care of the people that they are responsible for in their own place, but instead have laws which are not useful for protecting freedoms of their own people. So this is a story that has so many different ways to look at it and so many different ways to get in. But if we close our eyes, that's not a solution.
Yeah, just to tag on to what Margaret was saying. I remember freshman year of high school, they gave us the citizenship test in history class, just to, as part of our curriculum to show the immigration process. I failed it. And they were like, and my teacher was like, so do you and 47% of other freshman high school children that have grown up in this country K through 12. 47%. It's ridiculous, the little nuances, and it almost felt like trick questions, based on the wording. It's crazy.
And I believe the test is also written in English, and if English is not your primary language, that's another barrier.
This past week, I got an email request from a Hispanic organization in Asheville to contact legislatures in Raleigh because a bill, HB 10, was introduced it was introduced last year. The governor overrode it. He vetoed it. Well, they've introduced it again. It would require any law enforcement officials to report people who they couldn't determine their citizenship to ICE. And our sheriff so far has refused to do that, cooperate with ICE. But that's now been introduced again in committee. I was just looking up to see what happened. It passed committee. It will now go to another House Rules something. But we could have an opportunity in the near future to reach out to either Ralph Hayes or Mark Pless and say we are opposed to that kind of enforcement in our community.
Can I say one other thing about this whole situation? Because you can't be afraid to talk to the people that disagree with you on this. And you don't want to, the thing I always go to is, why do we spend so much time, so much money? We have a prison industry that are vested in keeping this immigration thing set the way it is. They are making tons of government money. We spend all this money putting them in prison, deporting them, not letting them in, because they're going to come in anyway. They got no place to go. So they'll come in illegal and put them back, and everybody's making a lot of money on this, rather than spend the money on processing these people and keeping track of them. Now they're contributing to our society. They will want to become part of our the diversity that makes us great. It's where are we spending the money?
And with the move toward having more private prisons, it just make the problem
They make a lot of money, they're all for it.
Yeah.
But it's also happening in our public jails and prisons. If I'm not mistaken, Madison County makes money off of juveniles, and juveniles coming in from other areas of the state.
From other counties that cannot have a facility. So the question is, does it make a difference to us from the perspective of our Christian faith? Does this problem have theological underpinnings? And how are we to act as Christians in this period and this time? So, I'm going to continue with seeing if we have some good ideas. Do we practice hospitality?
just want to say,
hospitality form.
I lived in San Diego, and we did a lot of work with people on the border. We had Tecate, we had an eye clinic, and then we had a little surgery clinic where we would do cataracts, glaucoma, things like that. And then the children that needed surgery, we would take to Tijuana General, and we would do some surgery there, cataracts and strabismus and things like that. And it's amazing how when you stand on the border, San Diego, take 1 foot over, it's holy, it's just, it's a disaster. And I had a woman, I just had a baby, I adopted a little girl. I was living in San Diego and I wanted to go back to work, but I couldn't treat the baby, and a Mexican woman knocked on the door. And I knew Spanish. And she said, "Would you like me to clean your house?" And I said, "Well, not really." And then she heard the baby crying in the background. "Oh, la niña, la niña." She picked her up. And for 10 years, she raised my daughter. And when she was in Mexico, she had 7 children. 3 died. All they needed was antibiotics. They couldn't get antibiotics. It's just I don't know about this problem. I don't know if it can be solved. So many of them in our country, just for medical care.
But if we begin to think about it and begin to learn more about it, maybe we can do something that will make a difference.
The background of many details of Jesus' life in the early church. Here, I think we can go to the next scripture slide. That's decreased on my screen. The duty of Christians in Romans and 1 Peter. Entertaining angels unaware in Hebrews and Matthew. So one of the practical questions that we have before we get to evangelism is, what does our space say about real hospitality? What does our space say about our hospitality? How accessible is our space?
He's talking about the physical church.
Do we have handrails to assist people entering our worship spaces? Ramps? Is our location, is it a drivable place? How's our parking lot? Is it walkable? How we maintain our sidewalks? Sometimes it's the little things. And because they don't often may not affect us, we might not always be aware, right? We may not always be coming for the first time into our worship space. Is it clean? Is it presentable? What's the yard look like? There were people who used to ask me about flowers when I was serving a local church. I said, I have known nothing about flowers. I trust your gift. And what you think looks beautiful. Those willing hearts who are concerned about the beautification of our sanctuaries, grounds. When we enter our sanctuaries, how is that entranceway? Is it welcoming? Is it clean? How's the lighting? the information about the church, the information about our ministries, information about visitors, for visitors, to help them become a part of our community. In the sanctuary, pre-COVID, we had hymnals, right? Were there enough hymnals for those who were worshiping? Before many of us had the screens, the words of the songs, etc. Or were they in our bulletins? Were there enough bulletins placed available in our pews? No old bulletins, candy wrappers, trash, etc. in the pews. Little things can make a difference. I'm talking about some practical applications of being hospitable, of hospitality. Particularly, as I'm talking about now, in our local congregations and places of worship. Restrooms, are they clean, sanitized? Paper towels and soap, toilet paper, little things make a difference. And I'll be honest with you, that's kind of one of my pet peeves. If I go in the restroom and there's no soap and paper towels, I'm like, really? Little things.
We do that pretty well, yeah.
Finally,
That's
another
the easy part.
area of being practical application of hospitality. Who are our greeters? Who are our ushers? Who will the stranger encounter upon entering our community and our space? Do their gifts and personality fit their ministry? For example, you have an 8 o'clock service at 8 a.m. and you have a greeter who is not a morning person. They haven't had that cup of coffee. They need to ease into their day. Is that the best person to have? Welcoming strangers, making that first and lasting impression. Again, some practical applications.
Well, we only started officially having greetings.
Is their online presence inviting and welcoming? There are opportunities to be imaginative about our hospitality. I've had opportunities in congregations where I've served to establish a hospitality ministry specifically. Not that they're solely responsible for the hospitality of the congregation, but they help lead it and be examples for other members of the church. And then there's some specific roles that people play in that. So what follow-up do we have? One of the joys that I have, I'm not serving the congregation, I'm serving the conference office, which is full time. So I have the opportunity to visit congregations throughout the conference that I never had before, because I was preaching every Sunday. And I love that experience. One of the things I may have to fill out the visitor card, because I get tons of emails and other follow-up, which is wonderful. That's a way of being hospitable, showing hospitality. Congregation went so far as to actually come to the home, our home, and to leave mug and other information, etc.
And this is a question for Arthur. How do we follow up? If someone should sign the visitor thing,
So there are opportunities
do we follow it up?
to have a lot of imagination, to do things differently. Again, I reference COVID. It's challenging.
I noticed that I looked at the book when I was young, that I just was perusing it, and there have been very few people who have signed the visitor little booth that's out there. Almost none. And that may to put their information down. They may not want to be contacted. And you have to respect the desire for privacy that is important to some people. You would have to find other ways.
Well, Paula, heading the outreach committee, have a meeting on this very task of how do we outreach afterwards. So in the process of streamlining from them filling out a visitor card to the end result, how do we get from A to B to C and who touches what?
Yes.
Can I say something to that point? When we got back from COVID and we started again, and we didn't want to take up a lot of time with announcements beginning before service starts, we stopped letting people know there is a register in the back. There is a card that you can fill out. Would you throw it in the colored basket? They may simply not know.
Well, what Shasta said is that at our last meeting, we came up with a process, and the greeter, when they greet a visitor, hands them a card, asks them to complete it, and Anne, bless her heart, says she will follow up at the end of the service with everyone she's handed one to, and ask them to give it back to her, and we put a plan in place to deal with it. What wasn't in that plan that might could be added to that and would probably be helpful is people who would volunteer to follow up with visitors other than the pastor. Yeah, but we came up with a plan because we felt like it was missing.
That's good.
I think our physical building and the sanctuary, I think the trustees have done a good job of trying to make this a welcoming place, and even to the point of painting walls and making it more attractive. Most people come in over here rather than over here, and we've tried to. That was a dark hallway, and I just feel like it's much more welcoming. The only thing I think our church is lacking is we don't have a program for children because we don't have any children. And you know, you don't want to have somebody volunteer, oh, well, I'll be in the nursery, I'll be there, you know, and then nobody comes, and then that person misses this group, which adds to their life, you know what I mean? Because I remember I taught Sunday school here for, I don't know, 16, 20 years, something like that. And I felt like I was missing out because I wasn't in the adult class. I was teaching the children, you know. Well, I've enjoyed coming back, and yet I feel like I don't know what we do to try to attract young families, but if somebody comes in, then somebody has to say, I'll go in there and work with them. You know, we don't have a program in place. We've got the facility, but we don't have a program in place because we don't have any children coming.
That's a circle. Where one thing feeds into the
Yeah.
result of the
Yeah.
other. So
We don't want it, we don't want the fact that we don't have any children be the rationale for us not having the program in place.
Well,
That's the
one
only
of
way
the
to break that
things-
cycle.
One of the things I did prior to this was we hired a nursery worker because the university's right there, and we could get university students. We have the facility, we have university students who are education teachers and stuff. We could potentially find someone to actually come in, and it doesn't cost that much since it's only one day, and it's, you know, it's not a huge expense.
It's on the back burner, but it may actually cost nothing. Because, go ahead, Jim.
there's some tentative plans too. And I put out a feeler once with the education department and their early childhood experience program to see if they would be willing to work with us and use the nursery as a learning experience, and maybe some student could get some credit for that.
Like student teaching.
Yes, sort of like that. And there was an interest, she expressed an interest in the program, but once again, we never followed through. Because we didn't have any children.
Yes, it's just,
And you will make sure you don't have any children.
Yes.
Have the program, you know, the baseball field, build it and they come.
well, we're in a different era of church now. And so many young people
A lot of
just.
Well, that information that I presented about how the community is aging, but yet the school population is also building. More children are being in the schools, which means there are young families somewhere.
Well, they come to the preschool, Monday through Friday. We have children, parents, and grandparents coming into this building. We have a group in the morning every day and a different group in the afternoon, every day of the week.
It would be interesting to see if they are affiliated with churches in the area.
A lot of them are.
I think so, yeah.
A lot of them are.
Yeah, they're Baptists, most of those people.
Most of them.
here are Baptists.
Well, we're in a Baptist hub.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew that the day I moved here.
So you can see the array of problems that come from just looking at hospitality. Are we showing hospitality to a family with children who come to us to visit? You got a big hole there. So maybe it's in for the children. Are we showing hospitality to migrants? Have we ever had a migrant come to our church? Except John.
We have the lady who has been coming recently, who is from Hungary.
Yeah, she's good.
I don't know her. I met her. I welcomed her that first day, but I haven't followed up. But I think others in the church have.
Yeah, I think she'll come back.
I think she'll come back.
But the problem is not one size, none of these problems are one answer fits all.
Right.
They're all individually based.
We had a young man who is at the university
There's
who
too
came
much.
on
Okay,
Thursday
up by these two right now.
invite the church lights artists to participate in a special gallery show, and they're gonna do a wax squat on Bailey Mountain in summer, starting
That makes sense.
and he wanted all of us to
Yeah,
submit
okay.
what he needed. And he had been in touch with Heath, and he put him in touch with me, and I invited him to come. I said, we would like to meet you. Well, he
Things
came
happen right
Thursday.
now.
Very nice young man. And at the end, after he had done his thing and he was getting ready to leave, I said, by the way, he has been here for maybe 10 years. But I said, do you have a church home? And he said, no. And I said, you know, we would just love to have you come and visit us. You might like it. It's a little church, but it's just, it's a good church. It's full of ideas. We're moving right along. And you seem to be moving in a direction at the college like we are going as a church. And I said, come and visit us. And he said that he has family. He has children. And I thought to myself, we'll get it in gear. We need to get it in gear, you know. So, Ryan, yes. So I don't know. Does he have 2 children? Do you know anything? There's 2 children.
They're probably above elementary school age.
Okay, I got the impression they were, you know. But I thought, I hope he comes to visit. But if you see a family or a young man, welcome. Maybe this is an opportunity, maybe this is just a little bitty step.
Okay, let's hear a little bit more. Or no, I don't guess we have time, do we?
That's 11 o'clock.
But, think about the levels of hospitality and how they start at the surface. But think about the deeper levels of hospitality. Next Sunday, and we will pick up and discuss a bit more and then go with this, which goes into evangelism. And his definition of evangelism is one that is